right, y'all. Welcome back to Self Care Safari Podcast. I'm your girl Safari, and this is my special guest, Matthew. So, I gave you guys a little bit of background about him before, but just a little bit of insight. So, I've attended at least one of his virtual classes. It was on the breath work, and me and him have personally had a conversation about spiritual growth, how you can merge it with practicality, and how some people they have the extremes of one or the other, right? Like sometimes you're spiritual without the financial gain, or it's a lot of disconnect with the spiritual community. So I wanted him to be on my show specifically because I feel like people in our community need to hear that, right? We're always either too spiritual and we lack in other areas, or we're on, vice versa. So I want you to kind of introduce yourself, Matthew, to the people, tell people about your company, and then we'll go from there, okay?
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's great. It's great seeing you again.
Yeah.
So yeah, my name's Matthew Finlan. I'm from Canada. I own and operate a company called Human Potential Academy. And at Human Potential Academy, we focus on the five pillars of human potential: financial, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. Our mission statement is to bridge the spiritual and the scientific community, as well as to bridge the spiritual and the financial community. And we have a whole bunch of stuff coming down the pipeline, especially in the next year here. But one of the things that I'm personally really excited about is our youth academy, where we're going to be working with kids, starting with some younger high school kids. And our primary program within the academy is called the Courage Program, and it's a psychological resilience and goal achievement program. We've used the same program to help people unlock their physical pillar, lose weight, fix their gut dysbiosis, gain muscle. We've used the same tenets within Courage to help people make $10,000 a month in their business. We've used the same Courage tenets to help people repair their relationships. So, what we teach in this program really helps with psychological resilience and goal achievement, kind of regardless of which pillar it is that you're hoping to improve. And we also have an events and retreats division. Right now, we're doing a lot of our events in Vancouver, Canada, but we're going to be going global pretty soon here in the next year. We're looking at some places in Southeast Asia to host some retreats. And then we're in the future, we're going to be coming out with our practitioner division. It's a little bit slower of a roll. There's a lot more yellow tape, but it's what we call real medicine, less pills and vaccines, more like diet, electroacupuncture by Vol, traditional Chinese medicine, herbs, and
Yeah.
massage, diet, good water, stuff like that. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I love that. So tell the people a little bit more about the history behind this because I feel like, and this is, I can only speak from experience, but when you're starting a company or a business like this, it usually comes from a very personal place. Because, during this endeavor, I'm sure this, it's very personal, especially I can tell it in your voice, like how you speak about it, how you advocate for the people and you almost feel like you've been through it in a sense, or like you have the expertise to relate to the people so that it's not just coming from an inauthentic place. So where did this originate from? Like, do you have a personal experience that kind of triggered what happened and how you started it?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, well, I'll try and do this as quick as I can. So I'm from
Yeah.
a small town in Canada. Like I live like 5 miles outside of a town of 3,000 people. So I'm out there. And so it was a great childhood. Didn't come from a lot of money, but great childhood. Used imagination, wasn't sucked into TVs, didn't even have, I don't think man, we had two channels until I was like 13 or something, and they were like both
Right.
news all the time.
Yeah.
Um, so, anyways, like I ended up going to Vancouver, and where it all really started, surprisingly, is when I started doing door-to-door sales. So I learned what commission was when I was 20, and it just blew my mind. I just didn't know how the money world worked, which is kind of a testament to what we're trying to do at the kids' school, trying to help people with money. And yeah. So, anyways, I learned what commission was. I was really good at door-to-door sales, and I got promoted. I moved out to Ontario, Toronto, and this is where it real started because I found out that if you teach people how to do sales and business, they don't do sales and they quit. But if you teach people about having a healthy mind, healthy heart, healthy body, good relationships, good communication skills, then they'll sell, because health, happiness, and confidence is really the key to business and sales. And so I'll skip over a whole bunch of other details, but this is where I first came up with the 5 pillars of human potential, and I've looked at it as a spectrum ever since. So the spectrum goes neuroscience, psychology, philosophy, spirituality. It's on one spectrum, and we can't separate them. So I ended up coming back to the West Coast, to BC, and then I ended up going to Hong Kong. That's a whole other story on its own. And I was out there. I was doing some pretty wild business stuff out there. I ended up starting a company with one of my best friends called 100 Days of Discipline. It's a 100-day body weight calisthenics workout program. There's easy, medium, and rough. Easy is we have a 72-year-old woman doing it right now, and so it's like it's enough motivation for me to get off my butt and exercise every day. But what happened was that unlocked my physical pillar and my discipline, and then it unlocked my financial pillar and my emotional pillar, because I had more self-love, I had more self-patience. So I had more love and I had more patience to give to others. Fast forward again, I come back to Canada, and then I was helping some of my friends in Vancouver who are in the wellness industry, breathwork, yoga, do business, because they're empaths, they're healers, and so they often don't like to make people feel uncomfortable. It's a personality trait called agreeableness. So they don't know how to close sales, they don't know how to charge enough money, they don't know how to do negotiation, they don't know business stuff. That's what happens a lot in the coaching and healing wellness industry, is people get a craft, they go and they get a certificate, they get good at a practice, and then they think that they can just bring it to the world and they're going to be successful at business, when really doing the actual practice is probably 5% maybe of what it means to be a successful person in the coaching wellness industry. And so I was helping people with that, and then it kind of took off from there. I helped my first client, I helped my second client, I helped my third client. They all had those different goals, like I mentioned. One of my clients wanted to teach what I had, and that's when things really started to take off. And it was like, honestly, clearly God's plan, because the way that the people have come into my life in this past year has been uh, nothing short of a miracle, honestly. Like first, Brian comes into my circle. Brian's been hosting breathwork and facilitating and embodiment practices for a decade, and him and I were great because he brought a lot of practices that I didn't know, and I brought a lot of science to what's actually going on within these spiritual practices with him. And him and I have just, been a very synergistic relationship. That's where the events first started. Then all of a sudden, Bay comes in, and Bay is EAV bio practitioner, and she is also phenomenal at design, website, Instagram, social media. Not my strong suit. And then Selena comes in. Celine managed TED, oversaw budgets, not TEDx, TED, and her ability to spreadsheet is just phenomenal, and she loves it. And organization. And so all of a sudden, all four of us are working together, and now like we're all like in the process of becoming full on partners within Human Potential Academy, and it just took off from there. And so it was really organic, really amazing. Every single person that has taken the program has left with a lot of value, and that's been really like reassuring, because when you first kind of start, when you're a coach, you're like, I don't really know if this is gonna work,
Right.
because you don't know until it works, right? Like you think
Exactly.
but then, yeah. And so that's it in a nutshell,
Yeah.
without talking for the entire hour about it. Yeah.
Oh no, I get it. See, and that just kind of speaks to the enthusiasm and the personality that you bring to what it is that you do, and I love that. So I kind of want to dive a little bit deeper, only because I'm speaking from personal experience, right? So
Yeah.
people in the spiritual community, a lot of the times we have to initially break out of an idea, a whole paradigm shift between spirituality and religion, because how we grow
Mm,
up is religious.
hmm
Most of the time, because we're taking on whatever our parents tell us to do. So I grew up
mm,
in a Catholic church, and I was taught by the book, but it was a very religious way of how to communicate with God, how to create a relationship with God. I didn't really discover spirituality until I went on this internal journey within myself that made me start seeing religion in a way that felt very restricting. So that
mm,
shift between religion to spirituality, it is just that. It's a whole shift, it's a whole mentality you have to break out of. So I said that to say, with what it is that you do, a lot of people don't know resources like that is available. So, I
Hmm.
mean, but where do you feel like the disconnect is? Because for us, when you're sometimes you can get lost in your spiritual journey too, right? Because
Hmm.
if you don't know like what you do is available, it's kind of just you and God, and you're just kind of picking things from here and picking up things from there. So it can get kind of hard to kind of narrow down that journey and figure out if what you're doing is the right fit for me, or if I should, you know what I mean? So I want you to kind of elaborate on that. Like, where do you feel like the disconnect kind of happens in terms of people being more spiritual than all the other potentials that you have? Like, how can we begin to merge those into one? Like, where do you feel like the
Hmm.
disconnect happens initially?
So just to clarify, you're asking like almost the difference and disconnect between what we call spirituality and religion and why that's
Mm.
happened and how that's
Yeah.
happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, good question. Something I've definitely like pondered. And
Yeah.
I think I have some pretty good conclusions that I came to. And one of them, it's really interesting how you said it, because you
Mm-hmm.
said that you did religion by the book. And uh, in my experience, that's not what people are doing, because the book is dialed. Even if it's been edited 10,000 times, the Bible is a dialed book. I think I could probably count on one hand the number of Christians or Catholics that have actually read the book.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be a great place to start. If you go
Mm-hmm.
back to like early, I don't know, you go back 500 years, 1,000
Yeah.
years, there was people that were called Gnostic Christians.
Mm.
Gnostic is a Greek word from gnosis, which means knowledge. And so they were more like knowledge seekers, looking at life through like the lens.
Uh-oh. Might have lost you here. You still with me, Matthew?
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah, I'm back.
Okay. Yes.
That may happen one more time. I'm visiting my family in the interior, so
That's
the
okay.
Wi-Fi. So, what was the last thing you heard?
So you're saying going by the book, it's very dialed, but it's a
Yeah,
good place to start. Hmm.
yeah, the book is great, and so I think one thing that Jesus went around and went into temples and was like stirring it up, right? And he said that this is the temple, body's the temple. And he said, where two or more are gathered in my name, that's where the Holy Spirit is. And then now we've gone and we've created churches after Jesus was going into all these temples and being like, what are you guys doing in God's house right now? And so one of the, I guess, issues that I've seen every time I've attended church is that the preachers are always just talking about like, oh, like Jesus loves you, and it's always like kind of the fluffy, soft, like kind of good stuff going on in the churches. And I think the reason for that is because uh, the number of people that attend the church affects the support that the preachers get from the big body of the church. And uh, if you've done spiritual work, you know that it's not only not just light, but it's usually dark. Like it's usually mostly a lot of darkness. You go deep into the darkness and you got to bring light into those areas. And
Yeah.
so people don't like to hear that en masse. That's why so many people are so lost in the sauce right now, and so disconnected from God and themselves and relationships and their health and everything, because they don't want to hear the tough truths. And so going into, you don't want to go every Sunday and go get reminded about how much you are messing things up, but that's like the real path of spirituality, because spirituality ultimately is like deep personal development with like practices that appear to be like getting you closer to some like greater good. And so I think like one of the big disconnects is just that. Now, one thing that's great about religion, because I don't want to just, I don't just want to, to talk all ill about it, is when I was doing door-to-door sales, the people that were Christians were way better humans.
Yeah.
by and
For sure.
large, and not just Christians, like Muslims, whatever religion they were practicing,
Yeah.
they were way better most of the time. Like
Mhm.
most of the time, like they were. And what do I mean better? I mean kinder. I mean,
Yeah.
I was never getting the door slammed in my face. I was never getting swore at. You know, a lot of the times they were open to like me explaining like certain scientific things because I was really interested into the brain and I was kind of talking about it from like a creationist standpoint. Um, so the community aspect of church is phenomenal. I don't want to talk ill about it, but the lack of encouragement to discover other practices is certainly um, a lacking concept.
Yeah.
Like I know people that are Christian that won't even do yoga or they won't even
Yeah.
meditate
Yeah.
because for
Yeah.
whatever reasons.
It's
And like one of the
witchcraft.
yeah,
Yeah.
witchcraft, inviting in entities and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
like one of the cool parts is like that I always love to quote is in the Bible, and I've spoken with priests. I have like some apostles that are friends in Africa, and I've had really great conversations with them. But one of the lines in the Bible, and I don't want to misquote it, so I probably won't say this perfectly, but it pretty much says, "When you pray, go behind closed doors and talk to your Father in
Yeah.
secret."
Yeah.
And for me, that's obviously meditating. It doesn't mean close your door and go pray on your bed in silence. It means like sit down, close your eyes, shut up, and try to listen, right? Don't try to think, just try to listen. And so yeah, there's a whole bunch of crossovers. Like you start reading these other texts and you're like, oh, it says that in it says that in Matthew in the Bible. Oh, it says that in Ezekiel. Oh, it says that. You start reading all these other ancient texts and you start seeing all these crossovers in the Bible, and then you kind of keep going back down this rabbit hole and you can see just so many similarities. And so I
Yeah.
think that is probably the biggest thing is it's like both spirituality and religion, the seed of both of them is awareness. For both of them, it's awareness. You bring awareness, boom, the seed of both of these things. And so I think for religion, like the main thing is just for people to be more open to, I guess, the concept that we are all pretty similar. It doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter what you look like. People are really similar. They laugh the same. They get in the same fights with their relationships. Doesn't matter if you're speaking Chinese or Swahili or English or
For sure.
whatever. People are getting in the same fights, laughing the same.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that's probably one of the big things is if I could just sum all of that up, people are closed-minded and they're not opening up their ideas to even like read these other concepts that these like highly successful ancient uh, civilizations practiced.
Yeah, I understand that, and that's very true. You actually touched on something that I kind of wanted to reiterate because I feel like some people we take on extremes, right? It's always either it's this way or it's this way, and you're right. Like you can be very close minded because I feel like as humans, sometimes what we love most is repetition. We love comfort. We love
Mhm.
safety. We love to do something that feels familiar. So essentially when you're bringing something new to my mind, it's like you're not just challenging my thoughts, you're challenging my beliefs, you're challenging who I've been all the way up until this point. So I
Mhm.
can't
Mhm.
it's almost like if you want someone to break out of that mentality, you have to not only address their thoughts, you have to address like their spirit and how they've been carrying themselves for a really long time. But me and you had a conversation prior to this podcast episode, and you said something to me that I feel like a lot of people aren't aware of, right? So you were talking about the different extremes that people have when it comes to either you said you traveled the world and you said you found people who were either really spiritual but financially not in a good place, or they were extremely in a really good place financially but spiritually deficient. So I
Mhm.
wanted you to touch on that a little bit more and explain why that is, and also explain how you teach your clients how you begin to merge the two. Because one thing that you said to me that I really love is that a person who's wealthy or has the funds but is spiritually in a bad place, it's it, it's almost it's bad for us as a people, right? Because if you can just teach that person how to merge the two, they can what they do can be more weighty, and it can affect more people, because not only do they have the right mentality to, appreciate people or help more people, but they have the resources to back it up. And what I found is that sometimes spiritual people can be a little meek. They can be people who feel like, well, I don't want to stand up and do that. I don't want to challenge the system and do that because that goes against my religion. I don't want to push back and do this. But the reality of it is, you know, uh, we just have a hard time with conflict, and especially when you add on the fact that maybe we aren't as wealthy and we don't have as much. We feel like we aren't as effective. So, how can you like explain that a little bit more? Like, because how you explained it to me the first time, I think it was beautiful, but I want you to tell it to the audience.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that question. I actually want to first just talk about, because you said the word meek. And
Mm,
so, and I learned this from Jordan Peterson, and then obviously did my own research and found this out to be true. And so, the word meek, there's this part in the Bible that says the meek shall inherit the earth, right?
right.
And that doesn't really make sense. At least when we look at what meek means in modern terms. Meek means what? It means like shy, timid, quiet, like, not dangerous, right? And when you go back to the ancient Hebrew and you look up what that word means, if we were to translate it, it would mean the people that have swords and know how to use them, but choose to keep them sheathed, shall inherit the earth. So,
Mm,
very different. It means
wow.
incredibly dangerous people that are choosing to keep their weapons sheathed, aka they're protectors and defenders. And you can't protect and defend if you're weak and meek in the modern sense. So, I just wanted to touch on that because it actually is a really good segue into the question that you asked. So when I was in Hong Kong, I saw people with like very abundant financial pillars and almost no spiritual pillar, lacking emotional pillar, certainly lacking physical pillar, mental and financial pillars strong. Come back to Canada, and I got to say I've been quite impressed with British Columbia, West Coast Canada, Vancouver. A lot of spiritual abundance, but due to a handful of reasons, everyone's pretty much broke, right? Like they're paycheck to paycheck, if that. And the problem with that is that, like, try being Zen when you can't pay your rent at the end of the month, right? Like, financial pillar affects emotional pillar affects mental and physical pillar, and all three of those affect the spiritual pillar. So, one thing that I was really passionate about, that I am really passionate about, and this is how my whole like official coaching career started, was helping the healers do business, right? Helping the spiritual people, the yoga, the wellness, the breath work, all of these people actually make money and do sales while they're doing it. And so I'm really quite passionate about this because I think of how I think of how much impact could be made if we equip a couple billionaires with high spiritual pillar, or if we equip a million high spiritual pillar people with some millions of dollars. We can really start to make some world change right now. And one thing that's going on in the financial community is they're looking at the spiritual community like you're dirty hippies and you're broke and you're dumb, and they're right kind of sometimes. And then we're looking at the spiritual people, looking at the financial pillar people like you guys are evil capitalists crushing the planet, and they're right sometimes. Now the problem is they're wrong sometimes too. The people with a lot of financial pillar, like you see this electricity here, you see that? Yeah, thank you people with money for that hot shower you have every day. Thank you people with money. Those foods you get from the grocery store, thank you people with money. So this whole spiritual pillar, all this aversion to money, is like, it's so toxic. It's
Yeah.
so toxic. And then on the other hand, although the ignorance of the people that have strong mental and financial pillar, not realizing how much more there actually is to life, they get old and they get sick, and then they usually come to God on their deathbed. It happens a lot. And so um, that's really like, if I could like kind of like tie this up, how I go about doing this is I talk about divine masculine, divine feminine, toxic masculine, and toxic feminine traits. This is from a lot of it is from Taoism, um, where, like, for example, right now what we're doing is we're labeling men as being toxic masculine, toxic masculinity. when really they're exhibiting toxic feminine traits. Like, here's a toxic feminine trait: caring about what other people think about you. That's a toxic feminine trait. Divine feminine doesn't care, she attracts. Toxic feminine cares, they go out, they do all the things. And so what's happened right now is, because of how uh, over masculinized the culture was, like right now, so many women going so far into their masculine because somebody does have to do it. But then what's happened now is there's been this big pushback from the feminine, and a lot of it has come. It's both. It's honestly, there's so much toxic from both sides, but the you can just see this, and it's just like right now the world is crying out for divine masculinity. Women want it, men want it, need it, and so yeah, that kind of encompasses a lot of like the training that I bring forward, and like, I guess, the passion that I have about it, because I really think, like, if we want to make a difference right away, we can do it in 20 years by raising the next generation right, or we can do it in the next 2 or 3 years by equipping rich people with spiritual pillar, or spiritual pillar with finances.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. I love that, seriously, because there are so many people, like I said, who don't understand the concept. And like you said, like the divine feminine and the divine masculine, like they're both just wounded warriors. We are afraid, okay? We are scared, especially when it comes to our experiences, because essentially what we're doing is like, and so let me just speak from experience. I've learned how to like mind my tongue on that. But sometimes, like when you're going through the motions of transition, right, or you're trying to, you get to a place where you're just self-aware enough to recognize what you need. It almost kind of points back to your past, where it's like, well, this is what I've experienced, and from this, I mean, I've just continuously experienced wounding and hurting every time I reached out
Mm,
for those certain things. So it can be hard for someone to come out of the mentality of, well, not pointing the finger, because it's almost second nature for us to be like, well, somebody needs to take the blame. You know what I mean? Like, I can't, like, I can't be me. Like, it's not my fault. I did everything I could as a person. But I think you're right. We have to learn how to start reprogramming our children and reprogramming ourselves. But I feel like sometimes it can get kind of mixed up between, like, man, like you can go down a really dark rabbit hole with this, because essentially you're trying to heal yourself, heal the bloodline, make sure you raise your kids right, make sure you do this. Like, it's so much that goes into it once you become self-aware enough to recognize, hey, like this isn't right. So, I mean, with what it is that you do, like I said, first of all, just kudos, man. Like, we need we need this in our lives. It's just some people don't know where to find it. Now, you mentioned
mm,
something about a retreat. Speak on
mm,
that a little bit
mm.
more. Like, I know it's still in the works, but
All
what,
right, yeah.
like, tell us the benefits of that, because I feel like sometimes what you need most, and this may be embedded by culture or whatever, but it's almost like an initial reaction when you're going through a storm or some type of spiritual confusion, or you're just trying to find yourself. It doesn't really matter what season you're in. I feel like it's almost second nature for us to cling on to what we know and cling on to
Mm,
something. It really doesn't matter what it is, like whether that be
mhm.
your toxic traits or like your old terrible coping mechanisms. So I feel like there is power in separating yourself for a while and giving yourself an opportunity or a space to just slow down a little bit and kind of rest and say, hey, stop. Like, let me do let me just separate from the crowd and gain a little bit of stillness within myself. So, like, in your retreat, is that something that you offer? Like, tell a little bit more about what it is that you provide in that.
Totally. So yeah, the retreat itself is like not even in its infancy yet. However,
Yeah.
we have been doing these uh, transformative events in Vancouver, which is kind of, it's I guess the infant stage of what these retreats are going to look like. And so the retreats, or the events, I can't wait for the retreats. The
I know.
events, I can't wait. I'm excited. The events are they're called Hika. So Hika is an ancient Egyptian word. Um, it was a god that was around before we had duality. If we were to describe it, if we were to describe what it means, it would mean magic slash science slash like medicine. And so what does that mean? It means you go back to ancient Egypt and you go, Doc, I got a stomach ache. And he's like, oh, okay, like here, like take this thing, it'll make you feel better. That would have been Hika. We went to the doc. You say, Doc, I got a stomach ache. And he's like, I'm going to pray over you and heal it. That would have been called Hika. So medicine, whether it's through magic or through science. And so what we do in these, this is a 2 week actually experience. We have an intention setting week. We do calls. We help people set intentions across their 5 pillars. Then we have our 4 hour intensive on the Saturday. And then the following week, we have the integration week. And integration is, I say it's more important than the event itself. But it's funny because it doesn't exist without the event. So what happens at these events is, and why this is so important, because you touched on this properly, is it's the community aspect, and it goes back to like the positive aspect that I said about religion, is like people get together and then they're all kind of like sharing this kind of energy. We do a handful of different things. We do things like dyad work, heart brain coherence, breath work, and then we do sound, other things like this. But it's amazing because what happens is, every single time we've hosted one of these things, there's been at least 2 or 3 men that have come in and they've kind of been like, what the hell? This looks like some dirty hippie weirdo like thing I'm getting myself involved in. And they always have the most intense experiences. And afterwards, they're just like deer in the headlights. Like, I can't believe this is thing. I'm bringing my boys next time because they're going to think I'm a crazy hippie now. This is wild. And whenever we're done these containers, you like leave the room and you walk outside. I don't know if you've done psychedelics or if any of your audience has, but like after the psychedelic experience is done, or like the next day, you kind of look at people like, you don't even know what's going on right
Yeah.
now. And whenever we like exit the building that we're in, you look around people like, you have no idea. You're just walking around with your Starbucks. You got no idea what's actually going on around. It's amazing. And so like, tying this back into the point that you said, and there's like science well understood, and it goes into the same thought as, you can't heal in the same environment that made you sick. And what happens is, and I feel this right now, right? I'm visiting my parents right now. I'm in my childhood room right now, right? I come back here and it's like my autopilot things are crazy. Like, if I didn't have awareness, I'd be doing the exact same things I was doing when I was a teenager in here, but I can feel like the pull. I get these pulls to just go do these. I'm like, that's not who I am. Like, I'm not going to do that. But if I didn't, you go back and you just go into these habitual things. And why is that? Because we are constantly programming. Like, we're constantly running program, but we're also constantly programming. And the brain is like it's like the most complicated thing and also the most simple thing. Because it's like, if you did something and you didn't die, then the brain's like, good, we can do it again because I didn't die. And you brought up how what we, and it's like how you worded it was perfect. It's like, especially like in regards to, this is just on the front of my mind, because I'm doing a relationship program with Brian, one of the other co-founders, and Dr. Divi, on relationships. It's called Love, Trust, Trauma. And today we actually have something tonight at 6 p.m. PST. It'd be awesome if you could make it, on switching the script on codependency. And one of the things that happens within relationships is you watch your parents interact when you're young. And then that becomes like your program for love. That becomes the program. And so we're all in, when we're in a relationship, we're all in some sort of codependency, at least until we become very awake and very full and whole as individuals. And our parents weren't, let's be real, they ain't. And when we see that, then we end up like copy pasting that model. And I'm sure you've experienced this, almost everybody has, where all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, like I'm either dating the parent that I didn't like as much, or I've become the parent that I didn't like as much. And then it's like, ooh. And so what is that? That's exactly the same thing we were just talking about. You can't heal in the same environment that got you sick, but that same environment kept you okay. And the ego has two jobs. It's to keep you keep you safe and keep you the same. Safe, same. Safe, same. That's the ego's job, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that, right? We're always going, ooh, the ego. It's like, its job is to keep you safe. That's fine. If a loved one wanted to keep you safe, you wouldn't hate it. Safe and the same. The problem is, safe ain't actually that safe. You just didn't die. And the same is like the opposite of growth, is the opposite of progress. It's staying the same. And so, yeah, so that's like the big thing to bring our reality to when we're talking about these types of things is that like you're going to be copy pasting these models that are likely just the same.
Yeah. Oh my God. You touched on something that really hit home, like so deep. Oh my God. But no, like the fact that you said you cannot heal in the environment that broke you. That really hit home for me because here's the thing, and I feel like a lot of my listeners can kind of relate to this. I feel like we want to pay homage or respect to our past. And it's
Mm,
almost like
mm,
I want to honor that so much that I'm willing to either stay the same or allow this comfortability to be my new normal. And
mhm,
I
mhm.
was actually working through, and it's so funny. Every time I have like these topics, it's almost like everything I go through before the episode is like leading up to this. It's like
Totally.
it's unfolding. It's unfolding. But no, so it's like I was actually working through that on my own because I started recognizing like I am in an environment that is producing the version of me that I am trying to break away from. And
Mm,
it's very hard for me because it's almost like two different versions of you that show up in those moments where you know it's time for a shift, you know it's time to move on. There's a
mm,
version of you that says, well, we haven't even addressed everything going on in the past, we haven't even looked at this, we haven't even done that, so why would I even be hopeful in the future? And then there's a version of you, which is your higher self, that's saying no. There's something internally that's always going to nag at you, especially when you have a calling over your life. There's something that's always going to nag at you that says like, nah, we got to go higher than this. We there's more to us than this. So
mhm,
it's like an internal battle you deal with. It's like you battling you. And I feel like you said, when it's around that time, community is very important. But I just want to touch on the fact that sometimes people in our community, people of color, like we have, or just people in general, forget that, it's like we have a hard time saying ouch, and we have a hard time saying that, being vulnerable enough to say that I need help. So
mm.
it's like you almost have to be around the right community of people who know how to know what to look for, or know like
Yeah.
the type of person who's like, you're not okay. You know what I mean? Because like I said, like
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
yeah, like some people are so good at putting on a poker face, and they're just like, I'm fine, I got this. Like
Yeah.
the strong woman syndrome. And I think you and me talked about that previously, but
Yeah,
it's very hard to break out of that mentality. So I mean, what are your
totally.
thoughts about that? What's your thought process?
Yeah. I mean like so the events, the retreats, right?
Yeah.
That's a different environment, right?
Yeah.
So you can go and you can do some healing that, and then people end up going back. And you see this all the time. Someone goes somewhere, they improve, they go back. Oh, guys, I'm healed. I can't wait to the show. And then they get damaged again. And like you said that you have like this internal conflict where, and you use the words right? Like you got to go do something, right?
Yes.
That's God that's telling you that.
Mm.
Yeah,
Wow.
and usually it doesn't make emotional sense or logical sense. Usually it's actually something like, oh, that's going to hurt my emotions because that's going to
Yeah.
involve me axing someone that's toxic that I love a lot. And so you answer those calls and you're going to go a long way. Now, the like for the record, I think there is a thing as race, but I don't think it has anything to do with the color of our skin or
I
what we
agree.
look like. I think it's mind state. I think it's mind
Correct.
like the mindset of people because I've met people of all different colors, all different races, all different cultures, all over the place. And like I go places and it's like we could be brothers and you're from
Correct.
China. We could be sisters and you're from Ghana right now. I'm like I grew up. There's like 7 feet of snow outside right now. Like, people never even seen snow. They don't. And so like you know on that note, like there are because there are people from all cultures, African American from the slums
Yeah.
that have become great scientists, great, great across the board. Because it's being done, it can be done, right? Period.
Yes.
That's
Period.
how it works. Because it can be done, it's being done. And like a great example of like looking at this is like the 100-meter sprint. That like we'll never beat 10 seconds. we'll never beat 9 seconds. It's impossible. We'll never be. And it's like, here we go. We keep doing it. We keep doing it. Why is that? Because someone's setting a little bit higher. It becomes a believable. It becomes achievable. And so, like, I think that certainly like there's certainly very difficult cultural. I want to just say the word programming. I was trying to find something else that
Yeah,
comes
but
along,
that's what
but
it is. Yeah.
programming around like being hard or being strong or being gangster or whatever it is. And like people are the same. The
Yeah.
gangster gets in the same fights with his girl that the
Yeah.
rich white lawyer in Hong Kong does. It's the same thing. And so I think that that's kind of like, that's what's so powerful about us getting on here and talking. That's what's so powerful about these types of retreats, about all these different people that come together. They're very different, but then they're very, very the same. Like very, way more similar than not. And
Yeah.
so it's really is just like honestly, it's just awareness. It's just awareness
I
and
agree.
like humility, I suppose.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like if you want it, like if you gotta want it, you gotta want to get better. It's like, what do you want more? Do you want to look hard for your boys, or do you want to actually get better and make a lot of money and have a good relationship with somebody? Because it's like whatever you want. I was actually thinking about this last night when I was going to bed. Priorities, right? Like
Mm.
priorities, you can tell someone's priorities, and it's not by what they say. It's by where they spend their time and spend their money. Boom, there's your priorities right there. Bang. Where do you spend your time? Where do you spend your money? Boom, boom, priorities going right there. And so, yeah, I think it's what we are in the process of doing right now, like leading by this example where, and you touched on the strong woman syndrome, and like,
Yeah.
look, here's the reality with it right now. Men are super weak. Men are weak. Okay.
You
And
hear
what do
that,
I,
ladies?
yeah. And well, and here, and what do I mean by that? I mean like they're focused on looking good instead of being good. They're focused on like looking like they got money instead of going and making money. Like you've seen the people that got a lot of money, they wear dusty jeans
Yeah.
and a broken
Yeah.
t-shirt. They don't got
They
the
don't
newest
spend their
stuff.
money on that.
Yeah, exactly. They've
Yeah.
got the newest shoes, new nails, new hair, can't pay rent. It's like that's not
Yeah.
what people are doing. Being an entrepreneur is living a few years of your life like most people won't, so you can live the rest of your life like most people can't. And that is like the big thing. You swallow that hard pill, you live 5 to 7 years while all your people are going out partying, having fun, and you're just building, grinding away. Well, in your 30s, it's going to be real obvious, or your 40s, or whenever it is, and you'll see. And so I think that it's just like, again, and this is Taoism, but feminine energy is chaos, right? Masculine energy is order. Okay, and so how I describe this is like the feminine energy is chaos, but then when you place the divine masculine structure over the chaos, it turns into creation, right? And you can see this. Um, uh, I think this is what we spoke about last time, where it's like I always use science and like real world stuff to explain these like spiritual symbolism. And so like the process that a woman goes through in pregnancy is like I can't even. I've tried to like picture it, and my mind literally like collapses in on itself.
Right.
Right? It's the most amazing thing ever. But without the seed, it doesn't even matter. Without the seed, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Don't matter. You just like that's it. Don't matter. Plant just the seed, just that one masculine structure. Boom, life. And so um, there's a lack of masculinity right now, divine masculinity, and somebody's got to do it because without it, it's chaos. And that's where this strong woman theory has come from. Theory, I like that. Strong woman theory has come from, is where it's like, I don't need no man. It's like, what about when a man comes to attack you?
Yeah.
Right? It's like now what are you
You're
gonna
gonna
do? And
need
this
the
is like
strength.
it's been coming up a lot is this whole like because I feel that's what it doesn't help men become divine by demonizing them and saying you don't need them.
Mm. Yeah.
It makes them weaker and makes them feel even worse. And
Yeah.
like I think that there's a bit of good to be found in like as a man, if I come up short,
Yeah.
and this is not necessarily male female concept, but the divine feminine calls out the divine masculine to become the best version of himself. She also gives him two thumbs up when he does a good job, right? And I'm using he and her, but we all have these internal concepts going on inside of us.
Yeah.
And so, but when we do break it down to the like female male, it's like the only reason, like, yes, we are dependent on each other for a handful of things, and saying that we are equals is foolish. Because we're not. Like, there's a reason that there's NBA and there's WNBA. We're not the same, right? We just robbed kind of this beauty of the individuals by saying these types of things, by saying I don't need no man. It's like, well, like, why not? Like,
Yeah.
why not? You want someone to like do the
Yeah.
stuff that men can do,
Yeah.
and I think
It's
that
wounding. It's wounding for sure. Yeah.
yeah, and so but it's a tough time right now because like men can't. Number one, like men aren't just going out there and making enough money to support the whole unit. So women got to go out there and they got to do it. I totally agree with that right now, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's somebody's got to do the divine masculinity, and there's not enough men doing it, so the women got to step up and do it. And when they're doing it, what they're doing is like, because it's like, oh man, what we've done is we've essentially programmed women to believe that they should become men. And what do I mean by that? I mean, like, most men don't care about how much money a woman makes. They don't.
Yeah.
Like, they actually don't. And for a lot of them, it's actually worse. Imagine this. It takes one man looking another man in the face and saying, at least I make more money than my wife, for that man just to be blown to pieces.
Yeah.
I don't need no man. I make $120,000 a year. It's like,
Yeah.
good thing you don't need them, because the
Yeah.
guys that are making less than you are gonna, like, that's gonna be a tough pill for them to swallow. Now, not all, right? Not all men, but
Right.
just like this is very large umbrella statements that I'm making right now.
Yeah.
But it's just the reality. It's like men don't really care about that. They care about loyalty. They care about being taken care of. They care
Yeah.
about, like, they gotta go. They go fight the whole world on their own each day, and they want to come home and like
Be
be
nurtured.
hugged. Yeah,
Yeah, and be
exactly. Like, just
nurtured and be
hold me.
loved. Yeah.
I'm owie right now. Like,
For
hold me.
sure.
And
Yeah.
so now the women want that too,
Yeah.
right? Because
And I
they're
feel
out
like
there doing.
there's a level of resentment that's like bubbling up between the two, because it's like, well, I want this and you're not giving it. Well, I want this and you're not giving it. And it's like, well, there has to just be a conversation to be had. And you know what? It's funny because I've been
Mm,
sensing this level of like collectiveness. Like it's not just I feel like we're all connected in the like Mufasa, like freaking Lion King. We're all connected in this great circle of life. But we are, right? And I feel like collectively we're going through this purging phase where it's like we have an opportunity to look at each other properly this time. But in order to do that, we first have to rip it open and look at the wounds. And I feel like that's exactly what this is. And that's why I love you created what it is that you create, because it's like everybody wants change. Everybody wants to do things differently and wants a different approach. But what would that look like? It looks like wounding at first, and people don't get that. It
mm,
looks like, first of all, it looks like hurting. It looks like purging and coming up with all of the emotions, all of the resentment, all
mm,
of the pointing the fingers before anything can change. And once that happens, only then are we going to then have an opportunity to now need a safe place, like what it is that you do to address those wounds. But I feel like right now
mm,
we're still just in the phase of like looking at them and saying, ouch, like, look, I'm hurting and I don't know who to blame. I don't know who to, all I know is that this hurts and I want someone to take the blame for that. And it's triggering up wounds, childhood
mhm,
wounds. Like, these wounds
mhm,
are deep. Like, what it is that you do is very important because, like I said, if we're going to change anything at first, we have to acknowledge what it is that we've been through. So it's so much that goes into this. And the wound is so deep. It's generational wounds that we're triggering
mhm,
up. It's
mhm,
generational, and it's hard for us to say or even accept things like spirituality and things like, oh, I want a different perspective, or I want to do Reiki, I want to do yoga, I want to do this, but I feel like that's witchcraft. And I just bring that up because I feel like a lot of people make that disconnect. Like that's why they don't want to embrace a different perspective. And that's all this is for me. I feel like going from religion to spirituality is just a perspective shift. Like it's the fact that you're going from this is what it is, it has to be concrete, to I'm willing to have a conversation about something. I'm willing to have a conversation, and that's all this is. So it's just a little bit, and I'm just glad we had this conversation because, like I said, like this platform is what it's for. I'm not making a podcast or creating a platform for a whole bunch of people to come here and just be like, oh, well, you know, she's spiritual, let's point the finger, or, you know, whatever. Like, it's just a place to provide understanding. And when you don't have understanding, I feel like the only other option you have is to judge. The only other option you have is to say, like, well, let's close the door on this because I'm not even open to it. But yeah, it's just what you said. You just hit the nail on the head. Like everyone's kind of pointing the finger right now, but like I said, it's just a collective shift. Like I just feel it so deeply. Our generation is changing. Like from our parents, how they were raised and what they were doing, they're so locked into their mentality that it's going to take our generation to say we have to do things differently, like because it's not working for us. And to add insult to injury, we've become self-aware enough to feel the wounds. Like I feel like sometimes people go so numb because they're doing it for so long. It's just like, well, I not only like the system, but I've adapted to it and I don't want to change. But God has given our generation an opportunity to like, look, the opportunity, it freaking hurts, okay? But he's given us the opportunity to like see the wounds and feel the wounds. And I feel like the only way you can heal something is if you feel it. You have to feel it, you have to acknowledge it, and then it can change. So like you said, it's just a conversation to be had. And it's all this resentment and all this anger that's boiling up in the surface between feminine and masculine energy. It's a purging so that we can ultimately have a different conversation. Like we have to start talking differently. We have to start incorporating different routines, habits, practices. We have to do things differently now. But it's going to be a little bit of a shock because we've spent so much time trying to adapt to the old system that it's just gotten to a point now where we can't. Like at some point in your journey, you become too self-aware to go back. You know what I mean? Like it's like I know too much. I've seen too much. I've experienced too much. I can't go back now. So I just love your perspective on it and how you kind of you word it. I really love that. Seriously.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And honestly, everything you said was awesome. That was super awesome. And you said the conversation, right? The conversation. And I just found this video today. It was so awesome. It was just these two guys talking about pretty much what I was talking about with the like the male, female, masculine, feminine type of conversations. And the two things that really come up for me, like so many crossovers, and we should definitely be incredibly proficient at both. We should be experts in both arenas. But there's this protector nurturer combination. And what these guys were saying, and I loved it so much, is it's like, I'm the better protector and you're the better nurturer. But when you're nurturing me, I'm going to be clapping you. I'm going to be taking notes.
Yeah.
And when I'm protecting you, you be clapping me and you be taking notes. And then like this reminds me, I've been listening to this Jordan Peterson and these like 7 other guys. They're breaking down Exodus. It's so awesome. There's like an Orthodox Jew. There's a crazy spiritual guy like me. There's this like other, like there's people that look at just as books. And it's just a spread of guys and they're talking about it and debating. And it's so cool. And Jordan said something which was really cool, and it's something I haven't thought about because I've definitely got kind of sucked into the political sauce these past couple of years. But I honestly think we all should be right now because it's a crazy time. But what he was talking about was the importance of the left and the right and the conversations that they have, because the right is about like setting up an operation and pretty much keeping it the same. But when that goes too far, dictatorship, and then the left, it becomes a tyranny. right? We're doing this the same way, and what I say goes. And then on the other side, on the left, it's more about like people and change and reform. And you go too far that way, and it's just chaos because there's no structure to it, right? Too rigid of a structure is a jail. No
Yeah.
structure at all. You don't got hot water. You don't got electricity.
Yeah.
You're just out in the wilderness for 40
For
years.
sure.
And
Right.
so, right, you're in the desert. And that's the interesting thing that this talks about is it
Yeah.
talks about how and the people were cursing Moses. They're like, why did you free us from the Pharaoh? Now we're out here in the desert
Yeah.
dying. And it's because that's what happens. When you leave the structure, you don't just hop into the promised land. You go through the freaking desert for 40 years before you get there. And that's what you're talking about. Oh, thanks God. But it is. It's what it takes. And like right now, it's you've probably heard this before. It says, "Strong men create good times create weak men, weak men create tough times create strong men." And it's like you are here right now, right? And we're observing this tough times creating strong. And men doesn't mean man; it means like human, right?
Yeah.
Creates the strong human. And so we're just feeling the call. I really believe it. I really believe like we're
I do
feeling the
too.
call right now. And I'm not completely convinced of this, but maybe I am. It's kind of bold.
Yeah.
I think right now we might actually be in the rapture where,
Mm.
because like I got to tell you, I
Yeah.
look around at people
Yeah.
and it's like we are living a totally different dimension, totally different reality. It feels like I'm getting like pulled up, and it feels like they are in hell, and Satan has come up here and is just ravaging them. And I see, I'm like, oh, like look, you're coming up with me. Oh, you're coming up with me too. I never met you before. And then there's like so many people, and most of these people that are going up, like most of them are alone. And this is one of the like one of there's two ways to tell if you've gone through a spiritual awakening. Two ways that are really like concrete. One, you lose almost everybody. You lose almost your whole family, you lose almost all your friends because you wake up and you shoot up and they're like, "Whoa." And you're like, "I can't like I just can't even I don't even like the same things that I like that we used to do and bond over. I don't even like that anymore. I don't even like your conversations that you're having." And it's like, that's an owie. But that's an owie. And then the other one, you really have a tough time working a regular job. It's almost impossible to do. And those two things, you see someone going through those things, you're like, got you.
Yeah. Be strong.
I'm here with you, right? Like one of us, I'm here. There's two of us now. But
Yeah.
the losing friends things is like this is one of the I think the things that probably keeps me really grounded in compassion, especially for people my age,
Yeah.
is like as time goes on, like I can't be positive that everybody's lives are going to improve across the five pillars, but I'm positive that mine are going to.
Yeah.
And it's not like a ha ha ha, I've got the last laugh. It's like watching all of your friends and family get sick, and die before you. That's the downside of these awakenings. That's the downside of waking up. It's the downside of strong health. Is a lot of people aren't going to do it. And so it's like I really believe like this is that like Jesus energy. Like you just got to have compassion and love for people because we get so sucked into the like. I used to be really fiery about, and honestly, sometimes I still am, about people that I love, like walking themselves into hell. And I'm like telling them, like, don't do that thing or it's going to get worse. If you keep doing this, it's going to get worse. And then they're just like walking, getting worse, getting worse. I used to get pretty fiery about it. But that doesn't really help, right? It doesn't really help. And we get so sucked into this like little time box that we're in. And we get sucked into like the negative present moment and it's like really like look forward 5, 10 years. You're good, they're bad. Are you mean to them then? Are you angry at them then? It's like, no, you feel compassion for them and you still want to help. But yeah, so
Yeah.
anyways, conversation is super
Oh
important to
my
have.
God. Yeah, seriously. And you really hit the nail on the head. Like it's I can feel that. I can feel that energy. Like there really is a big shift going on within the entire collective of people. And it's so, if you aren't careful, because like you said, like when you're going through a season of elevation, sometimes you are alone. And I feel like if you, like I said, if you aren't careful, you can get zoomed into that present moment so much that it's like, well, I want to be in it too. I'd rather accept it too then because I don't want to go. But see, like I said, when there's a calling on your life, you can't. Like even if you wanted to, you can't because you've seen too much. You've been through too much. You've emotionally grown too much. You're not that person anymore. So I really want to thank you for being on this show and having that conversation with me. We're right on time. But before I go, I do want you to answer this question for the people. A lot of the times, people kind of shy away from the services that you provide because they think that it's too expensive. So tell the
Mm.
people a little bit about the pricing. Is it for average everyday people? You know, spiritual people can be a little bit conservative. Like, what? Tell the people a little bit about the pricing.
Yeah, awesome. So within our academy, we have different pricings because we have apprentice coaches, we have coaches, and we have senior coaches. And so there's different like combinations of those things. And we do have free services as well. So our coaching programs range from 3,000 upwards
Mhm.
for a 3 month container. And um, we have free community calls that we run every single week. So this is about like if you're alone out there, you lost all your friends, you're going through a spiritual awakening. It's like, don't worry, we all did too. So on Mondays and Thursdays, we have those free calls, goals and accountability on Mondays, and shadow work and gratitude on Thursdays. And then we have a featured facilitation every 2 weeks on Fridays. It's amazing. Yeah, our coaching programs usually $4,000, $5,000 for the 3 month container. And if you're an entrepreneur, it's highly likely that you will make all of that back within the 3 month container. Almost all of my clients have done that. So yeah,
Good.
yeah, yeah,
Good.
yeah.
And how can the people reach you? What's the best way to get the company and get started?
Yeah, best way is reaching out to Human Potential Academy Instagram or find me on Instagram, Matthew Finland. Those are definitely the best ways.
Very good. Okay, thank you so much. Like I said, we're on
Thanks,
time,
Safari.
and I really appreciate it. I definitely want to join that call too, by the way. So send
Yeah.
me the link, and I'll see you there.
All
But
right.
yeah, that's our show for today, guys. I really appreciate you, Matthew. And until next time, guys, just love on yourself a little bit more. See you then. Bye, guys.
Bye.